I'm a mom, so I have eyes in the back of my head. My kid goes, "Is that the eyes in the back of your head? Is that how you knew?" Yep, that's how I know. What a joy it is to be with you all this morning. It has been quite a while since I've been in your pulpit, had this pleasure. And I want to congratulate you on a new era of ministry here in the Georgia mountains. I'm proud to call Reverend David a friend, and I could not be more happy for you all that you have found each other and have entered into shared ministry together. So congratulations. I was delighted to accept the invitation to join you this morning with a reflection on gratitude as a prerequisite of sorts for engaged and sustainable compassion. But before we jump into that, I have to confess something to you. You see, when I accepted Reverend David and Melinda's invitation, I saw Melinda is joining us online. I accepted their invitation in the fall of last year, and I thought, no sweat. I've been exploring the relationship between gratitude and compassion through my work with Emory's Compassion Center. I've got a great sermon worked up on gratitude. I'll just bring that to Georgia Mountains. And in fact, I sent my title and my blurb off to Melinda in November. She was shocked. She wrote back, "I've never received this information so far in advance." I was feeling pretty good about all of it and about myself, if I'm going to be honest. And then the holidays came. And then the first of the year. And then January and the capture of a head of state by the United States of America. And then the execution of U.S. citizens in the streets. And then clergy were called to Minneapolis. And here we are with spring springing forth. Slowly, I understand, here in the mountains. We're seeing the world engaged in a war of choice and the systematic dismantling of the world order before our eyes. We're seeing unprecedented attacks on voting rights and the freedom of the press and more than a laundry list of horribles that I can read to you here can capture. More, I would say, than our spirits can take as we read or watch or listen to whatever amount of news that we have determined we can appropriately titrate for our own sanity. To put it simply, since I sent Melinda my sermon blurb on gratitude, the bottom dropped out. My colleague, the Reverend Karen Hutt out of Minneapolis, recently introduced me to the psychological theory of assumptive reality, the concept of the assumptive world. This is the world we have come to know, the set of beliefs and assumptions we take for granted as true. As Reverend Karen puts it, the floor beneath us. That's the assumptive world. We take a step, we assume the floor will hold us, right? We move forward in the world, we make plans, we live our lives until the floor beneath us shatters. Until citizens are murdered on the streets of an American city at the hands of federal agents, until tear gas is unleashed on families and babies in minivans, until children and journalists are taken into custody, until hundreds of boxes of 6-year-old ballots are seized from a voting center in Fulton County months before the midterms, until the U.S. military murders people with impunity in the Caribbean Sea, until white Christian nationalism is put on display on the global stage as America's guiding force, until we pour gasoline on a tinderbox and start a fire that we can't put out on the whim of a gut feeling, until hundreds of school children are murdered by the United States of America. Until, and I had a really nice sermon on gratitude. Well, I've had to rewrite it. But I'll tell you what, I didn't scrap it altogether. Because here's the truth, as we're talking about truth these months. I've decided that gratitude But deeper than that, gratefulness, the poet calls it. Gratefulness is our superpower. That deep, abiding gratefulness we feel in the pit of our stomach, in the marrow of our bones, in the goosebumps that show up on our skin. That is our superpower. When we are truly grateful for another person, when we reflect on our own experiences with an eye towards gratefulness, when we see the world through grateful eyes and write our own love song to it, we see miracles all around us. Everyday epiphanies, the poet John Milton called them. And it's when the bottom has dropped out. It's when the floor has shattered. That's when we need gratefulness the most. Because it is through the cracks, as we all know, thanks to Leonard Cohen, that the light gets in. The light shines through and reminds us of the miracle of this life and this world that we share. The light shines through and reminds us that we are human above all. Human beings guided by love, blessed to be in community with one another, grateful for each other in the midst of it all. Now, in the wake of his death in January, there were a lot of videos out there circulating of ICU nurse Alex Preddy. We saw his heinous murder at the hands of Custom and Border Protection officers. Our eyes do not lie. Many of us also saw a video of his confrontation with officers 11 days before he was killed. But have you seen the video of him standing at the foot of the bed of a veteran who has just died? Did you see that one? Some of you did. He offers a final salute. He offered a prayer. He offered a blessing. Today, he said, we remember that freedom is not free. We have to work at it, nurture it, protect it, even sacrifice for it. May we never forget, he said, and always remember our brothers and sisters who have served so that we may enjoy the gift of freedom. So that in this moment we remember and give thanks for their dedication and selfless service to the nation in the cause of freedom. In this solemn hour, he said, we render our honor and our gratitude. In this solemn hour, we render our honor and our gratitude. As do we, Alex. As do we. And so in this solemn hour, we lift up all those individuals who have died in ICE custody. We lift up all those individuals who have died in this war so far, service members and civilians alike. We lift up all those out there right now who refuse to be silent, to be silenced. We lift up all of those here at home and around the world who are working and fighting and organizing so that decency, justice, and right might prevail. We render them our honor and our gratitude. I want to ask you for whom you are grateful this morning. Perhaps a mentor or a friend, a martyr or an ancestor, someone you know who's been on the ground or in the streets, perhaps children and youth who keep you grounded and focused on what is most important, perhaps a journalist, a storyteller, a spouse. Who fills you with maybe that glimmer of gratefulness that you can hold in your heart this morning? Let's call them into this space. And if you're online, let's write them into the chat. For whom are you grateful, my friends? Let's hear it. Heather Cox, we're going to hear from her. More? Who are you grateful for this morning? Yes. I'm hearing names of people in this room. That's exciting. What does that feel like to offer that gratefulness? What happens in your body? Let's just take a minute to take stock there. I see some smiles. Do your lips sneak up into a smile? Do you feel that warmth in the center of your chest? The vagus nerve goes right through the center of our chest and actually leads to that feeling of warmth and tenderness. What does gratefulness feel like? In our home, we have a very simple practice of giving thanks before the meal. It was born out of the church of my early childhood, First Unitarian Church of Birmingham, Alabama. Before we eat, we clasp hands and we recite the simple blessing that I learned over 40 years ago in my preschool Sunday school class. So don't think that's what's happening down there. It doesn't make a difference. We say, for food and friends and family, we give our thanks today. And if we parents are moving too fast, if we are forgetting in the hubbub of getting food on the table, of rushing from work to soccer practice to homework to gymnastics and back to work, if we parents tuck in without offering gratitude, it is most often one of our daughters who holds out her hands and says, wait, everybody, we got to say the blessing. And so we're invited then to pause, to offer thanks for the food before us, for the friends who fill our lives with love, for the family that we treasure. We connect with what is most important, that for which we are most grateful. We count our blessings. And that's what we just did now. We named our blessings. We called them in to sacred space, and there are so many. We could go on and on. So many human beings for whom we are grateful, even in the midst of everything we are experiencing as a people and as a nation and as a world. It might seem impossible. It might seem perverse even to feel grateful, to let alone express our gratitude in the midst of the uncertainty, the cruelty, the suffering we are seeing. But it is precisely during the most challenging times that gratitude counteracts that negativity bias in our brains, that it offers a clarification of our values, a deepening of love and care and renewed strength and resilience for us as a nation and as individuals. I learned this year from my good friend Heather Cox Richardson, who sends me an email every morning, and maybe you learned this too, that in 1862 it was, in the midst of a devastating civil war, that was when New York Governor Edwin Morgan proclaimed a day of Thanksgiving as a state holiday. He reflected that the previous year was, quote, numbered among the dark periods of history, and its sorrowful records are graven on many hearthstones. He went on to say, Richardson writes, that this was nonetheless a time for giving thanks, because the precious blood shed for the cause of our country will hallow and strengthen our love and our reverence for it and its institutions. Our government and institutions placed in jeopardy have brought us a more just appreciation of their value, he said. Let's hear that again. Our government and institutions placed in jeopardy have brought us to a more just appreciation of their value. It was true then, and it's true now. But what are we to do, right? What are we to do? That's the next question. In his farewell column, former New York Times columnist David Brooks wrote that we Americans have lost our faith, not our religious faith, although that tracks, but overwhelmingly we have lost our faith in our fellow human beings. And as a result, he said, we have become a sadder, meaner, and more pessimistic country. One recent historical study of American newspapers finds that the public discourse is more negative now than at any other time since the 1850s. And Brooks writes that what he calls culture is the cure. What do you mean by that, David Brooks? He tells us, by culture, he says, I mean everything that shapes the spirit of the age, the moral and intellectual moment, which constitutes the shared water in which we swim. In this definition, every member of society has a role in shaping the culture. We all create a moral ecology around ourselves, he says, one that either elevates the people that we touch or degrades them. I say, let us elevate, elevate, elevate. One of the most powerful ways we can elevate those we encounter in our lives is to offer them our gratitude, our gratefulness for who they are, for what they do, for the ways they contribute to our well-being and that of our larger society. We can do this in many ways. We can tell others like we did today. I love people sharing names of people in the room. Tell others how grateful we are for them in person, on social media. We can get out old-fashioned pen and paper and write a letter. During some of the hardest days in Minneapolis, my kids and I spent an afternoon writing thank you notes to folks in that beleaguered city. Just random notes to a random person from a random person in Georgia. We sent them to one of the ministers at First Universalist in Minneapolis, and she promised to distribute them to those who were in need of a kind word, folks in the church and beyond their walls. And I can only pray that it felt good to receive those notes and little cut-up papers from my daughters. I will tell you that it felt amazing to us to extend that gratitude. So we can send a letter, we can send a text, we can make a call, we can post on social media. We could even fashion a thank you sign for No Kings on March 28th, right? This is our antidote. The truth is this: gratitude is the antidote to this loss of faith, to the nihilism, to the distrust, to the outright hatred that we have seen overtake our nation. And this gratefulness not only benefits the receiver, it benefits the one who offers it as well. It's a gateway to resilience, to self-compassion, and to a deep and sustainable compassion for others. And these are all things that we desperately need right now. Science tells us that when people begin with a feeling of gratitude toward another person, what naturally follows is a feeling of tenderness toward that person. And that tenderness leads to an increased capacity for empathy and compassion, a stronger desire to wish for the well-being of another, for their wholeness and their care. The compassion meditation that I teach and practice myself, cognitively based compassion training, or CBCT, utilizes an understanding of the interconnectedness of our society as a vehicle for accessing gratitude for the thousands of people that we have never met, but who contribute on a daily basis to our well-being. So what happens when we apply this to our fellow citizens, those taking action in the streets, those sacrificing life and limb, those protecting, sheltering, and feeding their immigrant neighbors, and those very neighbors who are protecting and caring for their children and each other's children and elderly, those who are risking their own safety to keep others safe? What about when we extend our gratitude to our fellow congregants? I saw that you all are a good trouble congregation. To Unitarian Universalists around the country who are writing letters, who are working against the war, who are fighting against detention centers in our own backyard, who are praying with their feet, calling their senators and representatives in order to secure our right to vote. People all over this country are doing so much to save our democracy and elevate the people that they touch. Let's extend our gratitude to them now. Deepen those tender and warm-hearted feelings toward them. And as we do that, as we deepen our tenderness toward these folks, we can readily access a wish for their well-being, compassion for their struggles. And this leads us to act in ways that will contribute to their well-being, just as they have contributed to ours. And when we do this, when we envelop all these folks with our gratitude and our compassion, we are filled with even more warmth and tenderness. We can see that web of connections and mutual concern and understand ourselves as part of it. Is there something happening out there? Oh, the bubbles. Look at that. We can be grateful for children's bubbles. It's when we see that web of connections, when we understand ourselves as part of these everyday epiphanies, these everyday miracles. This is such an experience of connection and joy, great joy, in the midst of suffering, in the midst of great challenge, in the midst of this difficulty. These are the antidotes to what ails us. They're the hallmarks of our humanity. We cannot let them be taken from us. Perhaps we need more bubbles. Perhaps we need a secret stone to slip in our pocket so that we remember. Perhaps we need to set a daily reminder on our phone, put it to good use. Maybe we set a pact with a friend. But however we can remember, in this season of struggle and strife, of chaos and cruelty, of war and woe, let us carve out if we need to, those spaces to practice and express our gratitude, our gratefulness, in ways that help us remember who we are, in ways that help us make sense of our past, bring a glimmer of peace for today, and enable us, even in the most challenging of times, to create a vision of a different tomorrow. May we continue to be guided by love. May we continue to show our hope and our faith in one another, and in the ways that we offer our gratefulness to each other, to our comrades and our communities, and to our world. May it be so, and amen.
Wow. Generosity is a spiritual discipline. It's an invitation to remember we are surrounded by abundance, not scarcity. This quarter, we are partnering with TLC Humane Society in Dahlonega